got acquainted with Sparrow Place over Facebook. I don't know, it showed up in my feed and I didn't know anything about it, and I looked up their website and saw that, the work that they were doing. At this time, my wife was really getting involved in the anti-trafficking thing and sharing information with me, and being a father of 5 daughters, it really hits home. So I started getting interested and looking at what they were looking at, and some of the events that they were having, and what the work that they were doing and the work that they want to do. And I, along the way, got contacted Jan, and I know we shared at one of our meetings, I don't remember which one, the mid-year family meeting, that the possibility is out there, and it's in possibility phase of using the parsonage as a restorative home for women who were victims or rescued. So I asked Jan if she could come and just share with us, and I'll tell you this, Jan's heart, Sparrow Place's heart, is where God's heart is. More than 50 times in the Old Testament, God speaks to standing up for the widows, the orphans, the foreigners, and the poor. That's where God's heart is. They have a special place in his heart. Over and over again, he talks about that. And, the vast, vast majority of these women who are at risk, who are vulnerable, who are exploited, they're in situations in life where they are orphans. They were raised orphans. They are hurting financially, which makes them very vulnerable. They are where God's heart is. And I'm so glad that there's organizations like Sparrow Place that are joining with God's work and reaching out to these women and helping them. And it's not just women. I mean, men involved too, boys get involved, and little girls, and I'm sure Jan will share a lot of that. So without further ado, Jan, the floor is yours. Thank you for coming.
Good evening, everyone. So first, I'd just like to take a minute and definitely thank the church, your pastors, your leaders, for inviting Sparrow Place here this evening. We really count it a privilege to be able to share with you. And we'd also like to take a minute and acknowledge some of the team that's here this evening. So we have our co-founder, we have board members here, we have volunteers, and we have supporters. If you'd all just stand for a second. So we appreciate you all being here. I must say to you, we could not do this job without all of them and a whole lot more. So I want to start this evening, and I want to start with a scripture that God actually gave me years ago when he called me to this. It took a little while for God to really lay this out in front of us, but this is what he gave me. This is Isaiah chapter 58, verse 6. He says, "Is not this the fast that I have chosen, to loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free?" And that's exactly what you will be hearing about this evening. So I will tell you ahead of time that the topic I'll speak on this evening, it is very difficult to hear, okay? But unfortunately, we have to share it so you can understand why there is a need for a place like Sparrow Place, okay? The good news is I will end with a story of hope and healing. So let's just jump right in and let's talk about this, okay? So first, we have to define what is human trafficking. I know a lot of you here know, a lot of you, I think I saw yesterday as well, but very simply put, it is modern day slavery, okay? It has this long definition, but none of us really need to know what that is. It's just modern day slavery, and it involves the use of either force, fraud, or coercion, and it's to obtain labor or a commercial sex act. This evening, we will speak only about the Commercial Sex Act because we actually will serve women who have been victimized in this way. So when you look at this, you see that in a court of law, if someone is caught being trafficked or trafficking, they must prove one of those elements. So it's either force, or it's fraud, or it's coercion. However, if there is someone caught in this that is under the age of 18, they are automatically considered a victim, and no one has to prove anything in a court of law, okay? So I love to ask these questions. Do you think sex trafficking is happening here? Anybody here think it's happening here? Okay. So let's just go through these questions and just think about them, raise your hand, whatever you'd like to do. This can be very interactive. It's a Sunday evening, kind of laid back. So, do we have a heroin or an opioid addiction issue in our neighborhood? I bet we can all agree to that one, right? I believe if I heard correctly yesterday, Pennsylvania is third in the leader in this country for drugs. Do we have a hotel or a motel near where you live or work? Anybody? Okay. Probably not a stadium or arena or a farm show, okay? But it happens there. Anybody live near an interstate truck stop? Anybody? Okay. I don't have my phone on me. Does anybody have a phone handy real quick? Yeah, we can't actually do this talk without using a phone. So, anybody have one of these? Who doesn't have one? That might be a better way to ask. Oh, there's some. Okay, good. Okay. All right. Do any of you have access to the internet? Okay. So, if you could answer yes to any of these questions, you are living and you are working close to sex trafficking. And tonight we hope to help you identify what that might look like. So, here's some numbers, and I must say that we are always leery to share statistics because while this is a terrible number of people who are in trafficking, 63,380 cases were reported. Remember, when we say cases, though, there could be multiple victims involved. Most traffickers have 4 to 6 girls. So we're leery about it because it's highly underreported, it is non-reported, and victims rarely will self-identify. And because different government agencies get the information for different reasons, we have no set way to collect data. Okay, we can see, this is a map, a heat map, and you can see Pennsylvania's pretty hot. Human trafficking has been shown to be in all 50 states in the United States. And in 2019, they say they identified 11,500 cases. Again, these are only cases where somebody called and reported. These are not cases that no one ever speaks about. They identified 22,407 victims, okay? What I think is so interesting about these statistics, unlike a lot of statistics you hear about, every one of those 407 victims, they are living and they're breathing and they're being trafficked. They have a pulse, every one of these people. Let's get closer to home in Pennsylvania. This is an old statistic, but in 2017, you can see there were about 1,400 cases reported, again, just to the hotline number. In 2019, we show that there were 271 cases reported and 541 victims. Pennsylvania ranks 9th in the nation for human trafficking. So out of 50 states, Pennsylvania happens to rank 9th. What we do know about Pennsylvania, though, is a lot of times when a girl is picked up who is on the street, she is automatically charged as a prostitute and not as a victim. We don't take time to hear the story or to see how she even got there. They just throw her in jail, and she's another statistic. So we never account for her. And we also know that York and Dauphin County, we account for 5% of the state population, but we account for 10% of all human trafficking in the state. That's Pennsylvania. Human trafficking is the second largest. It is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. Who knows what number one is besides my team? Shout it out, you got it. Drugs. Yep. Drugs is number one. So let's explain what is sex trafficking, right? Because there's all different kinds of trafficking. Most of you here would probably think about the pimp-controlled trafficking, because that's what most of us know about, okay? And he has a lot of different forms, though, okay? One of the most popular ones now is, he's called a Romeo, and you find him a lot in schools, and he comes across as a boyfriend, right, or something like that in school. There's trafficking in porn as well. I will explain that a little bit more as we get into this. There is also what we call survival trafficking. So let's say that a mom and dad are on drugs, and a 14-year-old has to feed their siblings. What are they going to do? They're 14 years old, right? You may find them doing survival trafficking, or you may find a person that's homeless and they have nowhere to go. So what are they going to do? They're going to go to the front desk and they're going to try to work out a deal. It's still trafficking, no matter how you want to look at that. There is gang trafficking. There is a good amount of gangs in the city of York, so you know. And unfortunately, familial trafficking is the highest it has ever been. And that is because it is being driven by our drug problem. So I know it's hard to wrap your mind around, but mothers and fathers are selling their children for drugs. Why in the world would anybody do something like this? Well, it's really all about greed. It's about the money, right? And what we're finding is it's a high profit, but it's a very low risk business. And especially because now most of the business is right here. It's really hard to catch them. And if you remember when we talked about, when we started out and we said that it's the second largest and the fastest growing criminal enterprise. Well, it's quickly moving to first place for these reasons right there. So if we sell drugs, right, I do a transaction with you one time and we're finished. But if I sell you a 14-year-old, I can sell them over and over and over and over again, okay? Unfortunately, they are required to serve 10 to 20 times a day, and they work 24/7, and they work 365 days out of the year. The average pimp and trafficker, they're the same person. He has 4 to 6 girls in what he likes to call his stable. It is a $150 billion industry. Okay, it brings in more than Coca-Cola, Disney World, Starbucks, and Netflix combined. So, where do they find their product? Well, this is a huge one right here, the social media. But they recruit in schools, in the mall, bus stations, foster care, homeless shelter, wherever you go, they happen to go, okay? And the target age is 12 to 14. The main reason for this, as you can see, they have a very high market value, so they go for the younger children. Why do you think they go after these kids? Well, we know that children that age, right, are emotionally and economically dependent on parents or someone. They're pretty easy to manipulate and control. They always want to be loved. Anybody can easily swarm in and play like a boyfriend and because they're not equipped to think like you. It's easy to fall for that. A lot of them just have low self-esteem. So here we spoke about finding the product. So what kind, who are we looking for in particular? Well, unfortunately, we don't really care. We don't care what they look like. We don't care if they're tall, short, skinny, fat, different color, right? They can be rich, they can be poor, they can be anything. You cannot pick out who they're going to pick. It's crazy. All right, now, as we go through this, factors that make the youth more vulnerable, I don't want you to leave here thinking, oh, well, none of those are my family right there. This is just part of the picture, okay? A history of runaways. We know that there are about 500,000 missing children in America at any given time, and that is a very low number. And 1 out of 7 of those children will be trafficked within the first 48 hours. So if you do the math, you can see what a problem we have on our hands. And we often say, people are like, well, they ran away. We say this, but what did they run away from? Most of the time, they're running away from an abusive family, right? Someone who's already sexually abusing them. And so if they have to give it for free at home, well, why don't I just, go get paid right over here with this guy, right? They have a history of sexual abuse. 1 out of 10 children are sexually abused. 1 out of 10 children are sexually abused, and 90% of them know their trafficker. No more stranger danger, they know them, okay? It can be an unstable home life, any of those. It can be a lack of a father. And something Mike said really stuck with me, because they call their pimp daddy, so it has kind of a family, because they don't have a daddy. But the Bible is very clear about the church and its job to take care of the widow and the orphan. And I can't help but think of it, it gives me goosebumps as I think of it, that we're called for this kind of work. Often it's because they need money, and at high risk would be your LGBTQ community as well. 1 in 6 sex trafficking survivors that were surveyed, they were trafficked under the age of 12 years old. And I am speaking about America. I am speaking about American children who are being sold and bought by American citizens. Now, don't think you're exempt because you're almost 18 or you are 18. They really see this as a great opportunity, right? So when you're 17, according to the law, you are a victim. But as soon as you're 18, you are a criminal. So even if over here you've been in that life since the age of 14, as soon as you hit 18, the court says, you're a criminal. We're going to charge you just like that. So the trafficker knows, well, it's going to be pretty hard, right, for them to prove force, fraud, or coercion. So no one is exempt from this horrific crime out there. So who in the world sells children? Take a look at these pictures. A lot of them, they look just like us, don't they? That's why they're so hard to identify. They look like you and I look. You cannot profile a trafficker. You just can't profile him. You see there's some women in there, you see there are men in there. That's who is catching your children and selling your children. So who buys children anyway, right? Well, let's take a look at that one. So we have a police officer up there, we have a high school teacher, we have a driver, we have a bank manager, and we have a minister. And they're using social media to lure your underage girls and boys, okay? So they're using this, social media, but they're also using gaming, Does anyone in here have children that play games, be it Fortnite, Discord, whatever, you have an Xbox, anything like that? They're finding your children through that, so you know. That's how they're connecting up. So I have found my product, and I have buyers. So now I have to figure out, how can I break that person so they will do exactly what I tell them to do? So no faking it. Once this happens, here's the deal, and he's pretty clear about it. So he begins to monitor her. She is not allowed to leave out of his sight or whoever's watching them, okay? Keeps them away from this, social media, so that they cannot contact family or friends or anyone for help. They keep them in seclusion and they confine them, okay? And then they begin to give him or her to other individuals. So it might start out something like this. So the Romeo pimp, let's say, he's picked this gal over here. And so, I have just, doted on her, and I've taken her to dinner, and I've gotten her hair done, and her nails are done. But now she owes me. And she feels like she does owe him because he did all these things for her. So, I might as well go ahead and sleep with him, right? And then after a period of time, guess what? He says, you still owe me. And then he begins to bring in other individuals, and her nightmare begins. So a great way to control someone is to induce drugs. And it's popular belief, I think, is that, they're drug addicts, so that's why they're trafficking. That is not a true statement. Most of them are not drug addicts. They become addicted under their trafficker. He uses that as a tool to control them, okay? If I get you addicted to drugs and I hold them over here, you're gonna do whatever I say for them, aren't you? You're gonna do exactly. Some of them may use physical force or torture. They rename them, they brand them. They also use verbal abuse, and they incite shame. Sometimes children, after they're trafficked, they're like, well, I can't go home because my mother and father would never love me after they know what I did. You see how that shame comes on the victim instead of the perpetrator? But they carry that shame. The trafficker also will control their eating, their clothing, when they can talk, when they can sleep, everything. Most traffickers have done their homework, so they already know if you have a younger sibling at home that I can use to keep you hostage. So let's say that you say you're not going to come with me. That's okay. I know where you live, and I know you have a little brother. It makes it very simple for him. Also, they threaten their pets. Anyone here heard of Teresa Flores? She is a survivor. She shares the story. They threatened to hurt her dog, and I want to tell you that they followed through. Okay, they followed through and did it. Oftentimes what they'll do, if the girls will not comply like they're supposed to, they will go ahead and they will punish another girl and make all the others watch. So one is either punished or killed, whatever he chooses, and the rest of them watch, and just like that, they comply, just like that. They immediately take all identity. So you will not, if you ran into a victim, they would not have ID, they would not know even where they're located probably. They need all of that. We have to work to give it back to them. Banking is always done in their name, obviously, so he's not caught, and they always instill distrust of police and all authorities. When it comes to familial trafficking, what parents often will do is they'll threaten abandonment, or they might even threaten something as simple as withholding love, or I won't give you a place to live. Or they love to say, this is what all good little girls and boys do for their parents. This is what they do. They have to adhere to the gang membership, and often they get her pregnant. Now, let me explain something about this one. So they get her pregnant. So let's just paint a little picture here. So you're going down the street and you see what we would call a streetwalker. And you're thinking to yourself, she knows better than that, right? And she's getting money. I know she likes it because she's getting paid for it. But have you ever thought about this? That she got pregnant from her trafficker, and now she thinks, wow, he likes me more than all the others because he got me pregnant, right? And so then he lets her bond for 30 days, and after that, he takes the baby and he says, you will go and you will earn me X amount of dollars, or you will not see that baby. Just think about that, especially you moms in here, right? Once they get to this part, he just sits back and he just relaxes because they're just going to do what he says. I mean, it's all over. If we cannot recover these victims before all of this happens, this phase, it becomes so much more difficult for us. And it is really hard. I will tell you that only 1% of victims are ever recovered. 1%. Why do they stay? Well, there's the age-old question that we hear. So they stay because they have what we call chains on the brain. So unfortunately, during the slave time, right, we knew who was a slave because they had chains on, right? We saw visible chains on their legs or on their arms, and so we knew it. But now you don't know it because it's here. They have so manipulated and broken these women that they're just paralyzed. I mean, they can't do anything, right? There are more slaves today than during the transatlantic slave era. We don't talk about it, but there's more, okay? So I'll just kind of jump through here. What they do is sometimes they'll assault them, and then the next time they'll show kindness. So they get this crazy message, right? Over here, they don't know if they're going to get hit, and over here, they don't know if he's going to be romantic with them. They feel like anybody who's abused, they feel responsible. I can't tell you how many people we speak to, and even at 60 and 70, they still carry that shame and that as if it was their fault, right? I just can't wrap my mind around how this happens, but that's exactly what happens. They have shame and they have guilt. Where is this happening, you might be asking? Well, it happens actually in hotels and motels. You have quite a few in York County, and I believe we are in York County. Your strip clubs, they have trafficking. We've learned from a survivor. She was taken to 48 states, and then when the heat was on, the cops were on them, they would take them out of there and put them in strip joints. There they hid them, okay? Escort services, the same thing. Major sporting events, they are the biggest platform in the United States for trafficking victims. Super Bowl is #1 in this country. And then you have the farm show. They actually show up there. They show up at NASCAR, Kentucky Derby, you name it. They import victims for these events. Where there's money and men, there's victims, okay? They're at airports, bus stops, train stations, right? They're definitely at military bases and commercial brothels. So when you look at that picture, that's a commercial brothel there. And you can see that's a pretty nice house in that background, don't you think? I mean, it's nicer than mine anyway, but it's a pretty nice house up there. So you don't know if they're in your neighborhood if you don't know what to look for, right? They're in fronted businesses. You often hear people talk about massage parlors and nail salons and stuff like that. They are very strong in schools, very strong. They are recruiting now, not just high school, but middle schoolers. So what can you watch for? Here's just a couple of red flags that'll help you. Do you see cars coming and going at all hours of the night, maybe at one of your neighbors? Or do you see a lot of men coming and going at your neighbors? Or perhaps you don't even look for that because you can't even fathom that it's happening in America. But I really challenge you to begin to look through different eyes now. And, perhaps you see children or even adults, they're seen through windows, but you never see them outside. You never see them. Or you don't see children who go to school, but they're in there every day, right? Often, you could hear sounds of violence. If you live close to someone, you may hear screaming or banging. I strongly encourage you, if you hear or you see something and you have a feeling, act on that feeling and call the 800 number, okay? You can do it anonymously. All they want are the facts. You don't have to give them anything else at all. But they have a database and they connect things through their database. Some more things you can watch for. Injuries, signs that people might have had some physical abuse. This is great for teachers. This is great for nurses, Sunday school teachers, right? Neglect, malnourishment. Often they're reluctant to explain, right? You may find them, some pictures inappropriately on the networks, on these sites. Often they'll have inconsistencies in their story. And that could be due to trauma. It could be because they have no idea where they are, because the first thing they do when they pick up someone is move them. So now you don't know where you are, and you don't have family, friends, or anyone to turn to, right? They show signs, anxiety, depression, all that. Here's what you will find with a trafficking victim. They will keep their head down. So it will look like this. And they are reluctant to make eye contact with you. Okay, that's a really big red flag right there. Okay, so if you're in a restaurant or you're somewhere and you see an older gentleman with a younger person, I'm not saying it can't be a grandfather and a grandchild, right? But just kind of pay attention. Does the child seem a little bit nervous? Do they have this? Because they won't be talking on this if they're with their trafficker, okay? But they will not be making eye contact, and they will not speak for themselves. He will do all the speaking. Unfortunately, they are loyal toward their trafficker. They're bonded. They're totally bonded with their trafficker. So they brand them like cattle. Here's some of the signs that you might see. So if you're in a restaurant and somebody has their hair up and you see like a barcode on their neck, well, that's a good sign. You might want to, kind of pay attention. Now, never approach when you see something. Do not approach. It's very dangerous for both of you, okay? But pay attention. And if you can get, like their tag number or something, you can call all of that in. But one of the common brandings they do is the top right. You see it's a crown because, he's the king, and a name underneath it, or they might say property of. They do it on their lips. You can see it's everywhere. That's how they say which girl is theirs. So they brand them. Well, here's a subject we all don't like to speak about, but unfortunately, pornography is driving our industry. It's driving our industry, and let me explain how so. So, pornography is driving the trafficking industry, and trafficking is driving the pornography industry. So what is happening, what we mean by this, is that traffickers are utilizing, right? They're producing porn of their victims, And then the trafficker turns around and he uses the porn to train that child to be able to do what they're going to be coerced to do. So it's just a big circle. In the US, the average age the child is first introduced to porn, any guesses? Anybody want to guess? 7, that's a good one. So the average age is 11. She's not wrong that many children do see it by 7. Now, I'm not saying your child is sitting at home looking for this. It pops up everywhere, you know that. You know the enemy is really good at what he does, right? So they just happen to see it. By the time they're 14, 90% of children have seen porn. Now, I'm not talking, so you understand, I'm not talking the old-time Playboy. What I'm talking about now is it's hardcore, it's guerrilla-type porn. It's violent. A survivor calls it this. She says, when you watch porn, you watch me getting raped over and over again. So, for parents or grandparents, when you talk about porn, don't just ban it, because kids aren't going to do it because you banned it, right? Let's talk about how does it affect the brain and how does it affect the heart and the world around you, right? Go and be scientific with them. Give them facts. Don't preach to them. Just give them scientific facts. And if you give them the right tools, I feel confident that kids can learn to reject pornography, but you have to give them that. It's not a question, again, of if, it's when, right? America, the US, happens to produce 90% of the porn in the world, and we also export 90% too. That would be America, okay? What pornography is doing is, in simple terms, what I just explained. They force the victim to watch. They force them to act out while they're in bondage, right? They have to act out. They have to know what to do for the buyer. So I'm betting by now you are thinking, wowzer, that was a whole lot of information to process pretty quickly. So how can we make the smallest difference? How can we together make a difference in the lives of these women? Let's talk about it. So this is why Sparrow Place exists. We are a voice for the voiceless. If we do not speak, no one is speaking for them. No one. We see the women, and when I was sharing with you about the girl on the corner that you see, perhaps if you tried to really look at her, into her eyes, and can you see the innocent little sexually abused girl she was before someone abused her and trafficked her? That's who she was before. No child that is born says, when I grow up, I want to sell my body, I want people to hit me and abuse me. Nobody says that, right? So perhaps we could start to look at them differently. And words really matter. We know that words have power. So perhaps instead of calling them prostitutes, we could call them women who are being prostituted. Because you see, if you call somebody a name long enough, they're going to believe that, aren't they? We know about power in the tongue, right? We know it, especially as a church. So if we could just kind of change our language a little bit. Okay, so we expect the women who come to us that they will have experiences very similar to a group called Thistle Farms. And for those of you who don't know much about Thistle Farms, it is a great thing to look up and read about them. They are an organization just like Sparrow Place. They've been around 22 years, and they are highly successful, and they have a wonderful model which Sparrow Place has adopted. And that model is that We will not be doing authoritative housing, but we will be doing empowerment. We will be having the women, the survivors will have a voice, right? They will be able to talk about their own recovery plan and their own relapse plan and part of everything, because remember, at the end of the day, it's their story, it's their success. We're nothing but a conduit that God uses. And you know, he could use anyone, but thankfully he picked us. Well, I mean, we're pretty blessed. I'm not gonna lie, it's scary out there. But he picked us, and he picked us for a reason. But what we find when talking with their survivors is that most of the women that come to us, they will have experienced sexual abuse between the age of 7 and 11. And they will have used drugs, undoubtedly forced, or alcohol by the age of 13. And they will have been prostituted between the age of 14 to 16. 100% of the women will have experienced rape and or sexual assault. And that's why we want to be careful with our words. We want to be careful what we say. So here's our hope. This is the hope that we have. We are looking for a home, a safe home for our survivors, where we can offer 2 years residential program, rent-free, lavish them with what they really deserve, which is a gift of a home and a key, right? And just think, if we gave them matching furniture, right? And we gave them a beautiful comforter, just imagine how that is an outward and visible sign that they have worth. They've been told for years they have no worth. Wouldn't that be awesome, right? And so when the women come to us, they will also do alcohol and drug treatment. They will have physical, mental health. They will see dentist, doctor, you name it. Anything you see or go to, they will as well. And a few more things. One of the things that we learned is that many of the victims are looking for a pro bono tattoo artist who will take away or beautify their branding. Who would have ever thought? Who would have ever thought a service like that, right? So we need a place that's absolutely safe for these women, where they can just take a minute and breathe, be themselves, and just find out that they are marvelously and wonderfully made, just like you and I are. But by the grace of God, go we. But by the grace of God. So we've learned that healing, while it is physical, it is emotional, and it's definitely spiritual, there is also an economic side to that. So the women that will be coming to us, right, they have huge gaps in education. Many of them haven't even gone to high school, right? They may have serious addictions. They will be free of drugs when they come to us, but they will have had serious addictions. They'll have long arrest records, not their fault. It all falls on them from the trafficker, so he doesn't have to get blamed, right? And they'll have little work history. I mean, what are they going to put on a piece of paper, right? So our plan is to create a social enterprise, and we're going to, very much like you see Women at Risk outside, it will be something similar. We will make something and sell it. The women will do this, and they'll work around their education times. Then they can gain marketable job skills. They can earn a living wage, but in a safe, substance-free environment, right? Even when their 2-year program is over, they can continue to work with us, and they are forever part of the sisterhood of support. They're forever part of the family. So, Sparrow Place, we are here for the long haul. And the question is, are you ready to join us? So you may be saying, well, I'm not real sure exactly how we can help. Well, there are a lot of ways. One way is if you ever want to look at our website, you will see all kinds of volunteer opportunity. But a couple of things, I'm not sure if you are all aware, but CBC actually supports Sparrow Place financially, and it's such a blessing. Thank you so much. And so we need things like, and you have a huge church here, right? We need some pro bono attorneys, and we need some teachers, and we need some accountants for sure, right? Anybody that is really seasoned in grant writing, we need all those things, right? What we need the most, though, from every person in here, I cannot tell you how important it is that you take one of our cards, do whatever it takes, but keep this name in front of you, and please, please pray every day that God will provide what it is that we need, and that he will give us the wisdom once we have the place, and that you all will come alongside us, and let's together make them whole. Okay? So, any questions? Wow, I did a pretty good job there. No, I'm just kidding. Yes? She said, what happens when they age out? So I don't know that they ever really age out, at least not for years. I spoke with a victim who was 30 years old. So, I mean, they're pretty old when they age out. What will happen is a survivor's life is only about 7 years. So, because of all the abuse it takes, it's only about a 7-year lifespan. So it would be highly unusual. What that person might become is what we would call the bottom girl. And that just means that she is the number one girl in the stable. And so she would be required to go out and recruit you and you and you. And if we didn't, we would get a beating. So that's what would probably happen with her. Anybody else? Uh-huh. So it is imperative, because we know that only Christ can change it. That's the ultimate. Now, what we are looking at, so you can understand, it is very difficult when we speak to a survivor to explain to them that the God that we serve, that loves us so much, left me there all those years. Can you see the problem we're up against? So our goal is we will offer spiritual counseling services, right? They will be required to attend, but not necessarily participate. But I believe that even if you're sitting here reading a book in church, you're still getting some gospel, right? I fully believe it. And our hope is that we live such a Christ life that they say, I want whatever it is that you have, right? So we're really up against, as you can imagine, trying to explain to somebody who's been victimized 20 times a day that a loving God left you there. Go figure. Right? Yes, sir.
So I'm understanding that we suspect traffic that we call the 800.
Yeah.
And turn that over to them. How does somebody get from that 800 number to you? How do you get the ladies that come?
Okay, so there are actually two different things. So what he was asking was, if you see something, you call the 800 number. And I can give you the number. Unfortunately, I don't have it up here. But I would suggest you put it in your phone before you leave this evening. So that is when you see something, you report it to the hotline, okay? And they have the database, and then they reach the local authority, okay, to look into it. Now, our women don't typically come that way, so what they would probably do, they would come from police departments. We have a department we work with from Baltimore, Vice Undercover Human Trafficking. They may come from there. They may come from prison. They may come from another area. We typically don't want to keep a survivor in the same area where she's been trafficked, right? That would be really dangerous. So that's how that would play out. Okay, any other questions? Uh-huh. Well, I'm not sure how to clarify that, but out of 100, only 1% are ever rescued. Yeah. We tend to try to stay away from the word rescued, so I apologize, because they don't feel like they need to be rescued, right? Okay, so some traffickers do go back, some never go back, some go back. I find this so interesting, actually. Some of them go back 7 times, but they are successful the 8th time. What I find so interesting about that is that in the Bible, the number 8 is the number of new beginnings. How about that? Right? Mm-hmm. Probably not this evening. I'm happy to talk to you outside, or one of us to talk to you. Yes, she was asking about something called ghost and vault apps that the kids use on their phone. So I'm sure you all have heard that children are sexting, meaning they're sending inappropriate pictures of themselves through the phone, okay? A police officer we work with in Southern New York said he sees more sexting in middle school now than he sees in upper school. So what they'll do, so you can't find their picture, right? They go into what's called a ghost app, and they hide it. And if you don't have the password, well, you will never see the picture. But hopefully if you pay for the phone, you require that they give you the password. So yes, I'm happy to talk with you after this on that. Anyone else? Uh-huh.
You are Sparrow's friend. Yes. Sparrow's the other organization that you look at. How do you connect with other places in the country who are doing the same thing?
So we are part of a sister organization. There are about 50 of us that follow the Thistle Farm model. So our closest sister organization is in Bangor, Pennsylvania. And so we might send a girl there, or we might send them to North Star, right? We're part of a big database where, say, Sparrow Place takes women but no children, which is true, right? We're unable to take children. So we take women, but let's say this group takes women and children, so we will just redirect them. So we'll take people from all over the United States if they match what we're required. Okay? Anyone else? Yes? That's the age-old question. So she asked, do we get government funding? And I say big fat no. And I say it for this reason, because if we take government money, there's a good chance we cannot carry out our mission and our vision. So I fully believe this, that the God who called me to it will provide for it. So he doesn't call you that he will not make a way. So we do shy away from government anything, so you know. Thank you. Anybody else? No? So, yep. Mm-hmm. What do they have, 5? They have 5 homes now themselves? Yeah. Warehouse in place, and all of their survivors go into this program so they can get their work experience, they can have something on their resume, and they stay even after the program. So a lot of their survivors have higher positions or president of the company and other things as they go through the program, but I think they say 85 to 90% rate of girls graduating through their program and going on to transitional housing. Can you hear her, everyone? Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 They are the most successful nonprofit working in this field in this country. Thistle Farms is. So we love the model. We love it. So any other questions? No? So let me just leave, yes, Oh, I can give it right now. And it might sound a little funny, but it is correct. So it's 1-888-3737-888. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions? So I just want to leave you with this. This is one of my favorite quotes by Lewis. If not now, then when? If not us, then who? Let me repeat that to you one time. If not now, then when? If not us, then who? Who will go? Thank you for sharing the evening with me. We'll be outside. We'll answer any questions you may have. And I believe Mike will jump in from here.